and mastered it. He kind of like gave it a PhD, particularly in the area of emo. Each one, make one. Now, you'll also hear from Danny Miller today, and it has resurrected his life. I mean, he is one of the greatest resurrection stories since Jesus. I'm serious. And, you know, he's good. He's a wonderful person. Got great leadership from Rob Nigabraga and Brian O'Neill, his upline, and his teammates that became RVPs with him, put on the ring. And then, but, you know, made some changes, tried some things like building geographically a couple states away, and he got in a funk and got behind on his bills, and he was a hurting guy. And we met in November, December to see what we could do. This was at the request of Rob Nigabraga, and to see what we could do to help Danny out. And for the first time in my life, I suggested that he contact a good friend of mine, Howard Lashner. And because I knew what sophistication Howard developed, because he's kept me posted on this all the way and told me his tracks. And so because I was trying to evaluate, is it something we can all do? Can you copy it? Now, it's a little more complex. Now, the reason I'm taking this long in the introduction, learn how to copy it. I want to give you a secret of success for life and not just for unlimited referrals. It's the one I was given that started me on my journey to how you build wealth. And I was told by Claire Knox, get a hold of an expert and do exactly what he shows you. Now, you are hearing from an absolute bona fide expert doing it now, leading by example. I'll encourage you not to change anything until you have it humming like Howard and Danny have it humming. Just copy exactly. Start with that. And with that, you know what your minimum income is. $20,000 a month, 26 recruits there a month, and you'll all be off on the journey that Rob Omatoyo is on now. And he'll tell you it's a lot more fun, a lot more profitable, and a lot less painful. So we're very fortunate. He doesn't get anything for it. Howard came over to the UK while we were there twice. He wanted to, so to speak, accelerate his business. He came over, watched our op meetings, watched us do interviews. We know him very, very well. We don't let anybody up in front of you unless it's going to make you money. So we welcome one of our own superstars, Howard Lashner.
Sophisticated audio-visual equipment we're dealing with here.
Okay.
This binder clip, we're good to go.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. It is an honor to have an opportunity to talk with everybody today, and it's a thrill to be able to do this on behalf of the superstars. You know, Bob has truly been one of my mentors, really the main mentor throughout my entire Primerica career, and it's amazing for me to be standing here talking about referrals because I started December of 1984 in this business. I was just shy of my 22nd birthday. I was a failed college student. I actually went to Drexel University 1980, 81, 82, 83, and 1984, those 5 years as a freshman. Did somebody just gasp? Did somebody really gasp? That was the first. Did anybody else hear that? 5 years as a freshman. My parents were very proud, I can tell you that. And then A.L. Williams, Primerica, fell into my lap. Somebody spoke to my grandfather spoke to me, and I decided, hey, the college thing's not working for me. And so we jumped into this thing full time. And we really didn't know what we were doing. We were young. My market was 20, 21, 22-year-old kids also that either, were still at home, or actually I think all of my friends were still at home with their parents. And so it was, just kind of your market that doesn't really excite anybody. And very early in my career, I think it was the second or third leadership school that I went to, there was probably 1,000 people in the audience, and Bob Safford had one of his top people, Walt Spencer, stand up and teach. Hi, Bob. How are you? Good to see you. You remember good old Walt, right? He taught third-party referral system. And he was speaking relatively fast, and of course this is before the days of all the digital recording devices and whatnot, and the tape recorders were these giant things, and I didn't own one because they were too expensive. And so I just started to write as fast as I could everything that he said about how you get these referrals, how you get people to give you the referral letters at the end of the close, and what you say in the commitments, and so forth and so on. And we left Saturday afternoon at 4 or 5 o'clock or whenever it ended, and by Sunday evening we had memorized it. We never cold prospected in our entire career in this business because we learned third-party referral system. And the one thing that I'll start this off with is just to amplify what Bob said, is you've got to commit yourself to mastering something before you start adding your own curve to it. Before you start saying, well, I like to do this, and this is a good phrase or something. I'm not suggesting that you can't put your own something on something after you've mastered the original. If you don't master the original, you'll never know why something works or why something doesn't. You'll never understand truly what the results were. So here, I guess by the time we went to the Fast Start School and heard Walt speak, we were probably 22 years old. The very first appointment that we did, we had invited a gentleman that was probably 50 years old or something like that down to the opportunity meeting. He came to the opportunity meeting, and literally 40 minutes into it, he walked out. And I can remember him leaving and me staring at him as he's walking away, thinking, I should be saying something. But I didn't say anything. And so I went home, and I was sitting in my office, which was my bed in my parents' house. And I had installed the phone line because that was a big deal back then. And so I was sitting there, with my phone there, looking at my appointment book that was completely open and had nothing on there. And I said to myself, I've got to call somebody. You ever been there before? I have no idea who to call. So I thought of this guy, and I said, I'm going to call this guy up. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to see if I can get an appointment with him because he's 50 or something, and he's in the right market. He's a married homeowner, and I'm sure he's got kids, and maybe something will come of it. And I really don't remember what I said to the guy. And whatever it was probably not the right thing to be saying. But he was in the right place at the right time. And for whatever reason, he said, yeah, come on over and you can, show me what it is, that A.O. Williams does. That was my first appointment. And we went into the house, and at the end we did the two commitments, the commitment for business and the commitment for referrals, and we went back and we picked up the policies and scooped them and then did our analysis and came back, carried back on it, and started off with, last time we were here, blah, 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 blah. And then at the very end, instead of closing the business first, like a lot of people do, we went for the referrals and got them to merely list the names now and went through all that. And we walked out with 8 referral letters. No, in fact, we walked out with 10. And it just totally blew my mind. And we were excited about the commission that we were going to make on the life close. And I'll never forget this because I think it was $231 that we got advanced on that close. But what excited me wasn't that, because I was living at home with my parents. Although I was broke, I understood I wouldn't go hungry and I wasn't going to get kicked out. So what I wanted was a business. And so we were excited about these 10 referrals. We mailed out the referral letters. We had our script in front of us. And same thing, I remember like it was yesterday, we were in the Telford office and sitting, they had a conference table, sitting there with a phone with my script in front of me and just reading it verbatim. And I don't remember if we scheduled 4 appointments or 5 or 3 or whatever. But from that, 5 years later, I was still working referrals from that leg. Now, since then, I've lost track of where things come from. But I can remember saying to myself, I've made tens of thousands of dollars, hired tons and tons of people, because instead of getting excited about making the $200 of commission, we just followed the system that Bob was teaching, the hierarchy, and it played out and it worked. as fate would have it, the gentleman, David, who was the client, the 50-year-old, one of the people he referred me to was his son. And a year and a half later, that was the first death claim I ever paid. The son was in his 20s. He fell asleep while he was driving home around Christmas, hit a telephone pole, went into a coma for 30 days, and then died. He had a 6-month-old son. And that was the first death claim. And I always thought to myself, thank God that Bob thought enough of us to teach the system, because without it, David would have bought life insurance. His son would have kept a cash value policy. It was a $50,000 policy, and I don't remember what we replaced it with, but obviously it was many times more. And I thought to myself, thank God, because if that hadn't happened, David, who was now the grandfather, you follow me, the son died but had a little baby, would suddenly have all of this financial stress because he'd be saying, oh my gosh, my daughter-in-law has my grandson, and I've got to, you all follow what I'm saying. And that could have screwed up his retirement. Forgetting even the daughter-in-law and the grandchild's perspective on the matter. Just from his perspective, if he hadn't given referrals, it would have screwed up his finances. I have goosebumps as I tell this story. I mean, it's really amazing. So through the years, and it wasn't like we were the greatest in the world or anything like that, but through the years, one of the phrases I've heard is that the first rule of business is stay in business. So through the years, what kept us in business as we were trying to learn the business and get down the recruiting and duplication and building side and whatnot is that we always had places to go. We could always see people, even though I was 22 years old, even though most of the people had their life insurance policies longer than I had been alive, I still had the confidence to walk in because I knew that I had a system that as long as I did it the same way every single time, I'd always get referrals. Well, one of the things that Bob taught was each one make one. Most of you should be familiar with it, but I won't take that for granted. And each one make one basically is having the client make the phone call on the spot and then put you on the phone. Well, from there, as we've gotten into a do-not-call list world and whatnot, and answering machines and caller ID and whatnot, things have just gotten more complicated. And through the years, I would think that you'd probably agree with this, I can remember one Friday evening having 10 referral letters that I had mailed out, getting on the phone at 5:30, and by 6:30 or 7 o'clock, an hour and a half later, I had booked 9 out of the 10 appointments. Today, if I call 10 people on the phone, I can't get 4 of them to answer the phone. Would you all agree with that? It is, I'd have to make 50 calls to get 9 people or 10 people on the phone. You all agree with that, right? So it's not just me. It's just a different world. It's amazing. There's more access to people because of everything that we have, and yet people really are very defensive about answering the phone when it isn't the right time. For those that are my age or older, do you remember a time in your life when the phone rang and everybody stopped and went, oh, that's the phone, we have to get it, right? That doesn't exist in our world any longer. So because of it, we had to kind of update some things to be able to deal with those things. And so we basically have each one make one now that's designed so that you use the client's influence so that the people that they're referring to, is that okay? Okay. So the people that they're referring you to want to actually answer the phone. They want to actually talk to you. There's some type of incentive. We have the client take more of an active role in there. And I want to just give you 2 quick examples, then I'm going to introduce you to two people in a moment. But when we first started to make some of the adjustments in this, and we call it the pre-called introduction system, PCIs you'll hear me refer to. Pre-called introduction because the client pre-calls the people for you on your behalf. We went over to see a client years ago. I had hired a friend of mine that was a doctor, and he never did much in the business. And he introduced me to one person who's a how do you put it, like a money psychologist. He deals with people who have issues with money. He doesn't educate them on how to invest. He just deals with, all right, the husband wants to spend, the wife wants to save, they're having that type of thing, right? So he refers me to this guy, and I go over and I see him, and we do business and whatnot. And about a year and a half later or so, he calls me up, and he's all upset, and he tells me that my office made a mistake on the PACs on his investments, and he changed checking accounts, and we didn't handle it fast enough, and he got these 3 bounce check charges, and it's $105 of bounce check charges. And I said to him, I'll pay it out of my pocket. If it's my mistake, I'll pay it. And I said, but I just want you to know, I said, I'm going to research. I said, we're very good administratively in my office. I said, I'll research to find out exactly how we made this mistake so it doesn't happen in the future. I said, and I'd like to see you face to face. So anyway, I drive over to his house. My assistant is one of these people that remembers everything. Like I could never do anything illegal because 30 years from now she'd testify and say, I remember the socks that he was wearing. Okay. She wouldn't do one of these I don't recall. Okay. She remembers everything. So some people call her Rain Man. She's like Rain Woman with this. So she turns around and writes like 3 pages on, I called at this time on this day. Here's what he said. This is what I did. Blah, blah, blah. The whole thing. I did not make the mistake. So I sit down with him and I take out the paper with her notes, and then I take out the $105 check and I put it, we're sitting at a dining room table, I put it between the two of us. And I said, here's the check. I said, but before you take it, I just want to review with you what my administrative assistant told me occurred because I can't figure out where we made the mistake. So I start to go through it with him. You called her on this day. She immediately mailed the change of, whatever, the bank draft that day. She called you 2 days later. You didn't return the call. She called 4 days later. You didn't return the call. She spoke to you 7 days later. You said you'll put it in the mail. She called a week after that. You still hadn't put it in the mail. Blah, blah, the whole thing. So as I'm going through this, he goes, yep, you're right. Yep, that's me. That sounds like me. Yep, that was my mistake. Yep, no question. Yep, absolutely. So he goes, yeah. He goes, you're absolutely right. He goes, you did nothing wrong. He goes, it was totally my fault. Reaches over, takes my check, puts it in his pocket. Couldn't believe it. I swear, he took my $105. So I'm just thinking, all right, I really just have an attitude of, I just want people to be happy with me, So I figure, all right, this is $105 down the drain. So he takes my $105. Calls me the next day, says, I have a referral for you. Introduced me, says, I have a client, husband and wife, they're always fighting, and I thought of you because of how well you handled the situation, and I have confidence in you. So he refers me to this client. So I take a new recruit with me, right? It costs $105 per referral in this system. I want you to know that, all right? Takes a little bit up front, but on the back end, you'll make it back. So I take a new recruit with me, and I said to her, I want you to focus today on a few things. And, one of the things is how we build rapport with people. And another of the things is how we talk about referrals and our comfort level with the referral process and how comfortable the client will be based upon the way that we talk about it. So we get done the first appointment, and we get our commitment for the referrals, the pre-called introductions and whatnot. We go back on the second appointment, and the person, his name was Kevin, had 7 waiting for us. We do life business. We do securities business. We do smart business with the person. We make $5,500. The new recruit is bouncing off the ceiling. Oh my God, I can't believe it. This is unbelievable. I can't believe how much you made, and I was, and how much would I have made? I would have made, $1,500. This is incredible. And I said to her, I said, Lori, I said, you're missing the big part. The big part isn't the 5,000. The big part is there's 7 people waiting for our call. 1 became 7. If you follow the system properly, the 7 will become 70 and 700 and whatnot. You'll always have unlimited places to go. Well, anyway, we started to teach this among our team, and we were at a leadership event that we were doing for our hierarchy, and it was about 10 months or 11 months later, and I put up on the board and said, we saw this guy, Kevin, who gave us this. Here's the business we made and whatnot. 10 months later, we'd been paid $70,000 from one referral that started. And so, excuse me? From a $105 check. That was even better than a mutual fund investment, right? So the reason I say that to you is because I want you to open your mind up to you will make lots of money if you take your focus off of money. Okay? I'm gonna talk to you from the perspective that you're all vice presidents. I know some of you aren't, but this is a vice president meeting. And so we're going to talk to you from the perspective that when you sit down with a client, you know what you're doing. Okay, I'm not going to train on that. Your vice presidents, your senior vice presidents are more than capable to help you with that if you don't already have it down. We have incredible training systems here. But so when you get in front of people, I don't hear people in Primerica complaining, when I sit down with people, I'm really bad and they hate me. I don't hear that. What I hear is I love doing appointments. I'm really good at doing appointments. I just never do an appointment. Or I don't do enough appointments, or I did one appointment last month. Shake your head if you've ever heard that before. So what we need to focus on is, okay, how do we change that? We change that on the front end with taking the focus off the commission and putting it on, I just need to build a referral base. Even if I made nothing for a year, but a year from now, if I had 200 referrals, I could then make a boatload of money. Now, clearly, that isn't what you have to wait for, but I want to give you that perspective so that you don't get so antsy and act out of desperation, because otherwise what happens is there's certain things I'm going to recommend that you do that you're going to have a hard time doing if you're so concerned about making money up front. Having said that, I want to introduce you to a gentleman right now. He's a regional leader in our base. His name is Dave Durbin. Dave has been in our business for a few years now. About 2 years ago, he lived in Ohio, and he decided that he wanted to move out to the Pennsylvania area, didn't know anybody. And when he moved out, we made him an offer to help get him started. And I wanted Dave to talk to you a little about that and what has happened from knowing nobody in Pennsylvania to what he's been able to accomplish. So please put your hands together for Dave Durbin. Yeah.
You can just hold this and put that around your neck.
All right.
Good morning. Everybody hear me okay? All right. First, I just want to thank you so much for having us here. I really feel honored to be here. I mean, 4 years ago, as Howard mentioned, I joined the business about 5 years ago. And about 4 years ago, I was a district and was struggling to make 500, 1,000. If I made $1,000, it was a great month. And I actually, I lived in Cleveland and drove 8 hours 4 years ago to come to a Safford Superstar school where Bob was teaching the interview and the referral system. So I'm just absolutely taken back by having a chance to speak with you today. And Howard, thanks for giving me the opportunity along with Bob. As Howard mentioned to you, when I moved here, I knew absolutely nobody. And I think some of our biggest fears in this business is wondering who we're going to go see next, right? And so that was obviously one of my biggest fears. I'm like, Howard, I'd love the opportunity to come and work with you, but I know nobody. Zero. Not a single person in Philly. I live 450 miles away. I went to school in Pittsburgh, so I don't know, anybody out here. So how am I going to get things up and running? So Howard said, well, I want to help you. He said, I got some referrals that I'm not, I don't have the time to see, so I'll give you an option. He said, I'll give you 20 referrals now and 20 referrals after you go through those, or 30 right off the gate, and then no others. Do you all understand that? Okay. So I said, all right, I'll take the 20 and then the 20 later. 10 more is better. And we started to work those referrals, and we never had to ask him for the other 20. Ever. So when Howard comes up and actually teaches you the process, do exactly what he tells you to do, like Bob has said. Do exactly what you said to do. Because that's literally all that we did. We listened to the tapes. We mastered everything. We reviewed it for hours and hours and hours and role-played it in front of the mirror and with mom and dad and with my dog and anything that you can do to keep yourself on it, all right, and get practice you need to do. And so a month later, 30 days, I'm here for 30 days, and a month later we hire a person, and we hire her, she comes down to the op meeting, says, I'm not really interested in the business. I work 60-plus hours a week. I have no time to see anybody or anything. She said, I'd like a financial needs analysis. I don't know where I'm at financially. We go and do an analysis, and we set it up on the premise that, hey, you're going to introduce us to 7 to 10 people like yourself. She says, okay. All right. We then, on the back end, we do business. I made like $300. But I had these 7 referrals, and I said to her, listen, we're going to be working with these 7 to 10 people. May not work with all of them, but we're going to work with some of them. Why don't you come in on a silent partner, right? Get licensed, and then every time we write business, we can pay you, a couple $100. And then that's money that you can put towards your IRA because you need $600 a month to save. She says, no problem. Sounds good. Comes on board. We end up, I'll get to that in a second. We end up going and seeing one of her referrals, all right, who we hired. Then there's a long chain from that, and I'll sum that up at the end. But then she overhears a conversation of somebody complaining about finances on her job while she's doing her full-time job. And says, hey, you need to talk to my guy, Dave. All right, he's excellent. You need to take his call. Gets the name and number. We go do the appointment. We do not do business. You ever run into somebody where you give them everything you got? The plan is unfriggin' believable. It's like a slam dunk. But for some reason, they still say, not interested. Not a good time, you know. But we set it up, and we had seven pre-called introductions waiting for us. So like Howard said, it's not about the money. It's about having another place to go. I didn't care. I could sleep good knowing that, hey, God forbid something happened to this family, and they have $10,000 of coverage instead of $150,000. I don't understand why you didn't go for it, but I can sleep good knowing that, hey, I did my part, and I still got a place to go, right? So from that, okay, we don't do business with that person. We go all the way down. We end up doing a church seminar for somebody. We hired a bunch of people, and bottom line numbers are, through that chain of referrals, this is August of 2006 that we met this woman. From that one recruit, from then until the end of 2007, we've recruited 27 people, done $26,000 worth of life production, helped 31 families properly protect their families. We did 7 smart loans, $250,000 approximately in investments, made over $18,000 of income, and have a system where we don't even have to think about where we're going tomorrow. Between me and my fiance, the money, Bob and Howard and the rest of the Safford hierarchy always talks about the fact that you got to be good stewards of your money, right? That we're in this business, we got to make money and save money. And I fought Howard on that for a long time because I was broke as a joke, man. I was eating tuna fish, ramen noodles, grilled cheese sandwiches on the George Foreman grill. All right. Who's with me on that one, right? Okay. And Howard said, "Listen, Dave, you're making a little bit of money. You need to start saving some money." And I said, "Coach, man, I got some debt. I want to do some things. I want to buy a house. I need a new car." He said, "Dave," he said, "one of the things that Bob taught us was that if you don't learn how to save a little bit of money, when you're making a little bit of money, you're not going to save a lot of money when you make big money, right?" Okay, so I bought into that. All right, and we started saving money, and this year, all right, this isn't from the business that I just referred to, but just over the last 4 months, between me and my fiance, we've saved $14,000. Thank you. But that's no testitude to me. That's a testitude to what Bob and Howard have put in place for us to be able to do. That we can go out, you can take a guy who was a B student, a jock that nobody thought would amount to anything. And 2 years later, right, we were districts when we got here. We're now regional leaders on our way to vice president, and we're going to be promoting vice presidents. A year from now, we're going to have 2 vice presidents making over $250,000 a year. And that's because we submitted to a system, all right, where referrals never stop, recruiting never stops, all right, and your income never stops. And that's because of what Bob and Howard have done. So thank you so much, Howard, for letting us share that with you. I hope
that was Thank you. Hey, what really fires me up is you take a guy like Dave who joins the business when he was, Dave, how old were you? 23 years old. And he's got a philosophy on saving now in his life. Where, I was sitting between Tom and Bob, and when he said, if you can't save, a little money, when, a small piece of your money, when you make a little, when you make a lot, you're not going to save a lot. And, we saved $14,000 over the last 4 months. And you could just feel from Bob and Tom thank God somebody's getting that. We've heard Dad say that, if not, once, a million times. And that's just that's thrilling. Congratulations, Dave. Next person I want to introduce you to is Danny Miller. You heard Bob talking about him in the very beginning. We had an opportunity to meet for the first time in December, he and his lovely wife, and we spent an hour and a half kind of talking. And then over the course of the next few months, we kind of worked here and there by phone. And I have to tell you, Danny has just been such a blessing and such a joy in our life. One of the things about this business is there's certain things that you do that you get paid on directly. But there's a lot of things that you do in this business that you get paid on indirectly. Sometimes there's things that you do here that somebody writes you a check for. And then sometimes you get paid or you get compensated differently in other areas. Danny is an example of somebody that I look at like that I've gotten compensated on, even though it isn't monetarily. It's just with a wonderful feeling. In fact, I probably said to Danny a dozen times, through our career here, there's been so many people who've helped us that never made a penny on our business, that never overrode us. That in Primerica, you're supposed to be able to give back. And so our goal with working with Danny was that he'd be able to learn something. It would help him, and then in turn he'd help other people, and that's the Primerica system. But I wanted Danny to come up and just give you, 3, 4, 5 minutes on his perspective on what's happened over the last number of months. So put your hands together for Danny Miller. All right. Right in the head.
Whatever. I appreciate that. I can't, first of all, it all goes back to Bob Safford. I mean, I can't thank Bob and the Safford family enough. We sat down in late November, and as Bob said, I've been in the business going on 10 years. We got to regional vice president in on the fast track. It took us 4 years, right? That's a joke, guys. But in his book, The Epic, John Eldridge says that life doesn't come to us as a math problem. It comes to us as a story, one scene at a time. And so as I look back over those 9 years, almost 10 years now, it's been one scene at a time. And when we sat down Tony and I sat down with Bob in late November, he said, you need to talk to someone. Bob is a master at figuring out what's wrong with your business. I mean, instantly he knew where we needed to go and what we needed to do. And so he immediately got on the phone and called Howard. And I think we spent 15 to 20 minutes on the phone with Howard. And he invited us up to his office that following Monday. We were there at 9 o'clock. I mean, we were there, 10 minutes before or whatever. But we were there on, we wanted to be right on time and be there. And we ended up, it was actually 3 hours, Howard. It was supposed to be an hour, but he gave us 3 hours of his time. And it has truly transformed our business and our life. And we're not there yet, guys. I mean, we are not there. But Bob Safford and the Safford family and Howard, I mean, I can't thank you guys enough. You guys have truly changed our life. Anyways, what I want to share real quick is we said what Howard told us to do, and Bob says, do what Howard says exactly. And Howard has beat that into my brain, right? He says, now Bob told you, do exactly what I tell you, right? And we've tried to do that. And I'm not the greatest student in the world. I'm the tortoise. I'm the tortoise's tortoise in a tortoise and a hare story. Okay. So that's how slow I am. But once I get it, I seem to get it. But it just takes me a while to get it, right? But back in December, we sat down with a couple of them named Joey and Renee. Joey and Renee introduced us to Brian and Gab. Brian and Gab introduced us to Tom and Susan. Tom and Susan introduced us to Brian and Jody. Brian and Jody. Let's see. They introduced us to Carl and Chrissy. Brian and Gab also introduced us to Tim and Jen, Eric and Jen, Bo and Kim, Craig and Kara. Joey and Renee, the first couple, introduced us to Brian and Katie. Brian and Katie introduced us to Dave and Deb, Julie and Chuck. Joey and Renee also introduced us to Mike and Angela, who introduced us to Bobby and Pam, who introduced us to Julius and Tasha, who introduced us to Daryl, Darnell and Thea, who introduced us to Will and Dion. And then Mike and Angela introduced us to Charles and Michelle, who introduced us to Vivian and Randy, who introduced us to Jackie and Chuck. Okay, that since December, okay? That's just one introduction or one sitting down with a client. Joey and Renee were existing clients, okay? When I revisited them, okay, and Howard told me this, and I try to tell this to my team, we are an unbelievable company when it comes to recruiting and service, and getting clients. We're as a company, we haven't really been taught. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is on follow-up. I just was not a good follow-up. I didn't follow up well, and so he says, go back and talk to your existing clients, and I'm sure he's going to cover all this with you today. But go back and apologize for not touching base with them, and revisit all your existing clients. So that's what I did, and we sat down with Joey and Renee. We did a $282,000 smart and $41,000 in securities on an existing client. Okay, but in that leg of people since December, okay, we have done $1.8 million in smart. We have done about $50,000 in securities, including the 42. There's not a lot of small. These are young people we're kind of introduced to, so they don't have a lot of money. okay, but they had a lot of debt. So that's the reason with big, smart, and smaller securities, okay? But we did about $50,000 in securities. We did $8,759,000 in face amount of insurance, which was $13,681 in premium. Okay, so since December, all right, since in just this leg, that is $32,492 of income. Okay, now that's exciting because we were, like Bob said, we got behind. I made a poor business decision. I have family out in the Midwest, and so I thought, well, I got people out there I know, and I was going to traveling back and forth. My mom's out there; she's not well health-wise. I want to spend some time with my mom. So I thought I could go back and forth, right? Because I thought I had things going well enough in Delaware to keep things going. And then, well, when you're not there, guess what? Things taper off, okay? And so in that transition back and forth, it hurt us financially, okay? So it was really tough. And so, but now we've got, and you know what? I was sitting there thinking, I don't even know how many referrals I've got, what the number is. Tom keeps asking me how many numbers. I don't know. I don't know. I average 5 to 8 referrals. When I get there, they're sitting on the table for me. Okay, that's the average. And so I don't even know how many I got. Who was in my office? Shelly. Where's Shelly? You saw my folder, right? How thick is it? It's just that thick, right? So that's the good part. But what really has got me excited, I was telling Howard and I talked earlier this morning. Last night, through all of this, okay, I sat down with Darnell and Thea a week or so ago, and they became clients. And one of the pre-call introductions was to Will and Devon, and sat down with Will and Devon last night. But I called Darnell and Thea and says, "Hey, look, guys, why don't you meet me at their house?" So they met me last night at 6:30 at Will and Devon's house, right? Come to find out, Devon is quitting her job July 3rd, okay, as an assistant in an eye care facility because she wants to start her own business, but she doesn't know what she wants to do. She just wanted to start her own business, and she was talking to the doctor who they have literally clinics all the way up and down the East Coast, and she was talking to the owner, who's her doctor, yesterday morning. This is before our conversation last night. She says, now, Doc, she said, I'm leaving, on July 3rd. And he says, well, why are you leaving me? What? You're a good employee. She said, well, because I want to start my own business. And he says, that is amazing. He says, no one in my entire career, he's the son of the founder of this business. He says, no one in our entire career has ever told us that we want to leave you, leave your job to start our own business. You're the first one, right? And so, but she didn't know what she wanted to do. And so, I was telling Dave, one of my guys this morning, I said, you know what? Her husband is a amateur investor. He wants to build assets. That's all he wants to do. So when we met last night with Darnell and Thea sitting there listening to this, they were so jacked, so excited. They're coming to class on Saturday morning. We should take 4 IBAs Saturday afternoon. Okay? So yeah, the money's good, but it's the system, it's the unlimited referrals, it's the building process that we are really, really jacked about. And this is just one leg since December when we started working. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.